All right, I think we are ready to go ahead and get started. Can you hear me okay, Allison?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. It said I was muted for a second, so just wanted to make sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this virtual public meeting for the Union County Critical Intersection. Two of the program includes 5 intersections. We've been hosting separate virtual public meetings for each intersection, and tonight's meeting will focus on the US 601 and Brief Road intersection in Fairview. We'll start with a brief presentation that should take about 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up for a question and answer session. And before we jump in, I want to just take a minute to introduce the panelists that we have for tonight's meeting. My name's Jenny Noonkester with RSNH, and I'm a senior planner on the consulting team that's assisting Union County with this project. And next, I'll introduce Bjorn Hansen with Union County.
Good evening, everyone. I apologize, I don't have a nice blue background like everyone else. I'm obviously working from home and my computer doesn't support the background. So we're all working through technology issues together, but thank you for taking time out of your evening to attend. I'm the project manager for the overall critical intersection program for the county, and I want to thank everyone who's on the call for participating.
Thank you, Bjorn. And we have Philip Thomas with the town of Fairview.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may have.
Right. And we also have Travis Pressler with NCDOT.
Thank you, Jenny. Yes, Travis Pressler, NCDOT. I'm the district engineer for Union County, dealing mostly with permitting of driveway and access, along with encroachments and a variety of other things as well. Thank you for having me.
Right. Thank you. And next we have Allison Drake with RSNH.
Hi, good evening. I'm Allison Drake with RSNH. I am the consultant project manager for the Union County Critical Intersection Analysis Project.
And if you can go to the next slide, please, Allison. I'm just going to take a minute to walk through some of the logistics of the virtual public meeting. As meeting attendees, you won't be able to share your video or your audio. So if you have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. You can type your questions at any point during the meeting, and then we'll answer them during the Q&A portion after we give the presentation. We're also recording this meeting this evening, and we will post the recording on the project website, so anyone that wasn't able to attend tonight can view that later. And lastly, I'll just remind our panelists to please keep their microphones muted when they're not speaking so we can minimize any background noise. And on the next slide, we have an overview of tonight's presentation. We'll start with some background information about the critical intersection program, show you the intersection locations that are included in phase 2, and talk about the steps in the study process. And then we'll switch over and take a look at the online website for the 601 Brief Road intersection and talk through the design concepts that are being considered and the next steps. And then after the presentation, we'll start the Q&A session. And just a reminder that you can type your questions in that Q&A box at the bottom at any point during the presentation. And with that, I will hand it over to Bjorn to give us some background information on the critical intersection program.
Thank you. So the idea of working on intersections throughout Union County is something that was identified 7 years ago. Union County and its municipalities and the NCDOT were getting inundated with requests to do something about traffic, but we only have so much resources and so much effort that we can focus on specific locations. And we determined we needed a study to figure out which locations to focus on and what the improvements should be at those locations. So we received a grant from the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization to go through the identification and analysis process, as well as come up with some preliminary designs for those locations. And that was conducted and completed by 2016. In the next 3 years, approximately 2/3 of those intersections were actually funded. And that was seen as very positive, but it meant that we were left with intersections that weren't necessarily as competitive for funding, and we needed to refresh the program. So in 2018, 2019, we went through the process again and identified 15 additional intersections, but we did that work in-house to identify the locations, but we didn't have the engineering capacity to develop the designs and the cost estimates for those locations. So we received 2 separate grants from the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization to go through this process of developing alternatives, reaching out to the public for feedback, selecting alternative, and finalizing a cost estimate that can be used to go and apply for funds through various funding streams that are available for projects like this. So we completed 6 intersections in 2019 and 2020, and then we received the second grant, which we're underway now for 5 additional intersections throughout Union County, and we expect to be complete by June. Next slide. And you can see on this map, we have identified locations throughout much of Union County, but it's mainly where the population and growth is. And the ones that are in gray were identified and analyzed last year. And in fact, 2 of them have since been funded for improvements. And the second group is in navy blue, and we're in the 3rd meeting, which is at 601 in Brief. Tomorrow night, we'll have another at Bonds Grove Church in Waxhaw Marvin. And then the last one, Poplin and Unionville Indian Trail Road next week. But we are looking for public input and feedback and information about what the real issues are at these locations, and thoughts and opinions on the proposed alternatives, which will help Mayor Thomas and the Board of Commissioners for the county in choosing a design to move forward with for implementation and improvement of that intersection. Next slide. So with that background in place, now I'm going to turn it over to Allison to talk about the specific process for these slides and this process that we're going through for the locations.
Thank you, Bjorn. So in studying these intersections, Union County and its municipalities formed an advisory committee that includes the town of Fairview. So based on the data gathered and analysis results, 2 alternatives were developed for each intersection. We are now in the public involvement stage, where we are engaging the public for feedback through virtual meetings as well as the online survey. So these results will be used to select a preferred alternative for each intersection. Cost estimates and recommendations will then be compiled into a final report, which will be used to give Fairview and other municipalities a leg up to compete for funding for these projects. The final report will be posted on the Union County website upon completion. We will now show the website that is publicly available to discuss the intersection in more detail. So the US 601 and Brief Road intersection is located in the town of Fairview and is currently a 2-way stop controlled on the Brief Road approaches. Review of the crash history in this location showed that a large portion of the accidents were actually vehicles turning from the Brief Road approaches onto US 601. So this is likely from vehicles that have difficulty finding gaps in traffic to turn due to the high congestion that's on 601. So 2 alternatives were developed. Alternative 1 consists of turn lane improvements, and alternative 2 is a single lane roundabout. Alternative 1 addresses traffic delays with the addition of left turn lanes on both approaches of Brief Road. A traffic signal is not proposed for this location because the traffic volumes don't justify signalization. Intersection warning signs would be included for all the approaches to raise vehicle awareness and increase safety. This alternative does allow full access to remain to all of these properties surrounding the intersection. However, minimal right-of-way acquisition would be required. NCDOT has a standard process for this right-of-way acquisition, but it's not happening at this time as the project is not yet funded. This alternative has a negligible reduction in crashes. However, it does reduce peak hour vehicle delays, which are traffic delays during the busiest hour of the day, by 45%. The approximate cost of this alternative is $670,000. These costs include construction, right-of-way, engineering and design, and construction inspection. The cost is in 2020 dollars, and so that could go up with inflation before the project is funded. But since we're early in the design process, there are a lot of contingencies included in that cost. So the cost could actually come down without those contingencies when it's actually constructed. Alternative 2 addresses the safety and traffic delays with a single lane roundabout. This will increase safety for the vehicles turning off of Brief Road onto US 601 and improve congestion and vehicle delays. Access to all the properties surrounding the intersection would be maintained, and this alternative will require some right-of-way acquisition. So this alternative potentially reduces crashes by 50% and peak hour vehicle delays by 89%. And the approximate cost of this alternative is $2,480,000. So if you want to come back to review this information on the website later, you can click on the information circles as shown for additional information. There's also a survey at the bottom of the page here where you're able to provide your feedback until April 2nd. So the next step for the critical intersection analysis is to evaluate the feedback received from the public involvement and then select a preferred alternative for each intersection. The design concepts will then be finalized and then presented to their corresponding municipal boards, so in this case, the town of Fairview, for approval. Finally, a study workbook and action plan will be completed for all of the intersections. And as I mentioned before, that will be posted on the Union County website. So with the information provided in that workbook, the town and the county can consider potential funding sources and apply for funding for the project. So at this time, I'll now pass it back to Jenny to conduct the Q&A portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Allison. Just again to remind everyone that you can submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. You can also search online for the Union County Critical Intersection Program, and you'll find a link to the project website that Allison just went through, and you can also review the websites for the other 4 intersections. So we encourage you to go online and review the information and complete the survey to let us know which alternative you prefer for this intersection. And again, those comment periods are open through April 2nd. And you can also submit any questions and comments using that survey that she showed at the bottom of the website. So there you can select your alternative and also just provide any general comments or ask any questions that you may have. So if you think of anything after the meeting, feel free to go there and submit through the website. And lastly, we have Bjorn's contact information on the screen as well. So feel free to reach out to him with any questions about this intersection or the critical intersection program in general. So now I will actually go ahead and open a quick poll that we have within the online public meeting. So if you'd like to provide your feedback on which alternative you like, you can select during the meeting, and I'll leave that up throughout our Q&A session. And it looks like we do have one question that's come in already, asking that if construction does begin, how long would it take, specifically for the roundabout alternative? And maybe that's a good question for Travis.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. They were just asking if once construction starts, specifically for the roundabout alternative, how long would it take for it to be constructed?
Yes, it is maybe premature to say, but we oftentimes are able to start and complete roundabouts in locations like this in a matter of weeks, 8 to 10 to 12 weeks. And oftentimes we try to schedule those for summertime when school's out. So that would be a goal that we would look into. Sometimes there are other factors and constraints that cause us not to be able to schedule it in that manner, but we certainly try to keep it, when we close the road altogether, we try to keep it to a minimum. Now, we have done roundabouts where we keep traffic open, so we would not close the road or all approaches. And of course, you can imagine this would cause the construction time to increase dramatically. So there's a trade-off to either one of those alternatives.
Okay, and that kind of relates to another question that had come in that asked if there would be a need for a detour during construction. And Allison, you may be able to take that one.
Sure, yeah, just to kind of echo what Travis was saying, and again, this is kind of early in the design process, but when it does get to final design, one of the things that is looked at is how to maintain traffic. And so, there's an evaluation of, is there an easy detour route that's easy for people, especially locals that are using, this route, this intersection every day? Because as Travis said, if you close the road, it makes the construction go much faster. If you have to keep the road open during construction, which is doable, especially if there's not a great detour route available, then that can slow the traffic down. So I would say that there would be a possibility in that there could be a detour, and that would be something that would be evaluated in the final design process.
Thank you, Allison. And then another question asking if we can clarify which group will select the preferred alternative. So Bjorn, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Because this is in a municipality, the town of Fairview is certainly going to play a role, and they're going to weigh in with the decision. The Union County Board of Commissioners is also going to choose a design, but when you're talking about a municipality, the bias is to just support what the municipality wants. We only have one of the 5 intersections in this process that's actually an unincorporated Union County. So for the vast majority of them, 80%, it's really going to be what the municipality wants, with concurrence from the NCDOT ahead of time. They're not going to support a design that's not effective or feasible to build, because Fairview is not in a position to build a project like this. Union County is not in a position to build a project like this. It would require the capacity of the NCDOT.
Okay, and we have another question related to the detour and asking that if there's not a road closure, would there be a need for larger temporary construction easements? Allison, that might be one for you.
Yes, so that would be something that would be looked into. Again, a little hard to say with being in the early stages of design, but typically when we keep a roundabout open, what we try to do is build one side. So we kind of use that curvature of the roundabout. But, you know, with this being a 2-lane road and not much room to shift traffic, that there might be a need to do a little temporary widening, which might take a little bit more easement. So yes, there would definitely be more easement if traffic was to stay open during construction.
Okay, and then another question related to the impact to business owners. If we did have to close the road during construction, would the businesses be expected to close as well during construction? Travis, I don't know, is that one you could take?
Yeah, sure, I can take that. No, you do not have to close your business while we construct. We always, you know, do take measures and do what we can to make sure businesses can stay open. And even in cases where we close the road or close the intersection, access will be maintained in some way to the business so that it can stay open as it has before.
Thank you, Travis. And we don't have any other questions in the Q&A box at this time, so we can maybe talk through a couple of general questions that we've received. Bjorn, do you want to say a little bit about, I know we've gotten questions, people asking about other intersections where they had concerns that maybe weren't included in the critical intersection program. So can you talk a little bit about what happens with other intersections that weren't included?
Sure. So this process is for the county, and it does not mean that the town of Fairview or NCDOT couldn't choose other locations that they wanted to improve intersections. That's certainly within their purview to do. But the county, being large, can only focus its efforts on so many locations. So that's why we went with 15. And we did not choose intersections that were on corridors that were already funded for improvements. I'm thinking of Monroe Road in Stallings and Indian Trail that will be widened in the next few years. We didn't want to put an intersection project there and then have it torn up within a few years of it opening. We only have so much money, and we didn't think that was a good use of our funds. Same would apply for Providence Road through Marvin and Weddington and Waxhaw. So in situations like that, we did not include locations. A municipality could, DOT certainly could, but in terms of the county's emphasis, we weren't going to. I will also say that, you know, there's a range of improvements that could be made through this. On the previous cycle at 200, I believe it was Morgan Mill and Old Camden, which is adjacent to Unionville. The first option was for an all-way stop, and the second option was for a roundabout. Well, the residents supported the roundabout, but the all-way stop delivered almost the same amount of benefits as the Roundabout because the traffic volumes weren't that high. And so the NCDOT actually has selected that location and will install an all-way stop in the near future. And that will operate until, you know, it doesn't, because the volume's gotten too high or the crash history doesn't change. That was selected because the crash history was pretty high. So that's where, you know, to say that we're trying to put roundabouts everywhere, that's not the case at all. Trying to do the best solution at the lowest cost. So it's a balancing act. And in some instances, it may be an all-way stop for a while. But on a road like this, the volumes are too high to talk about an all-way stop, which would obviously be a lot cheaper than a roundabout. But you know, we look at a lot of options. It's a balancing act of issues. We look at safety, look at congestion. The fact that this was on a truck corridor was important because that's economic activity. So all those come together, and we try and get a holistic assessment of an intersection to identify them to put on this list. And so we're grateful for the partnership with the town and with the NCDOT as a part of this process.
Thank you, Bjorn. And that you'd like to have a break in the question?
Yeah, I would say that the comment period runs through next Friday, and this location has it may have the lowest number of responses so far. So we're gonna reach out to local businesses in the area to get some of the flyers that were mailed out and ask them to encourage people as they come into their businesses to complete the survey. It has the QR code on it, so you can choose your phone and take a picture of it, and it'll bring it up through your browser for you to complete, because that's really where we get the information. But in terms of the next steps, in the month of April, we're going to chew on the feedback and tweak the designs as necessary based on any feedback, and then present it first to the municipality. So Mayor Thomas and the town council will hear it first. They can make a decision to either choose a turn lane project, a roundabout project, or to say we don't like either of them. That is an option, to say we turn them both down. It would then go to the county commission afterwards with presumably a concurrence with whatever the town supported. And that would get summarized in the overall report for the 5 locations and the design recommendations for those 5 locations. And then we would move out with the coordination from the towns, the NCDOT, and the county to put together proposals for funding. And funding happens multiple times a year through the different sources that are available. So we're continuously looking for opportunities to advance these projects.
All right. Yep. Thank you, Bjorn. And I don't see any other questions coming through at this time. So I don't know if we want to hang on a few more minutes. I don't think we've had any new attendees come in since we started the presentation. So we may have covered everything.
Mayor Thomas, do you want to add anything about the town's next steps in terms of deliberation, whether you're going to bring it up for an upcoming meeting just for informational before you actually take it for action, and you know, the opportunity for the public to comment at your meetings?
Yeah, we mentioned it at the last town council meeting, and we'll mention it again in April, and then we'll go from there.
And the town meets once or twice a month?
We meet once a month. We meet on the second Tuesday, 6:30.
So probably this would go to the town council April meeting for action, ideally, if that would work for the town. But you know, if it has to shift to May, we can work around that. But the bottom line is the public can come and learn about this and provide comments, and the town council will, you know, have the opportunity to make a decision.
Yeah, I think it would be better to bring it to the town council for a decision in May if that would work out. Would that work out for you, Bjorn?
Yeah, we can. I mean, if that's the schedule for the town, then we'll make it work.
Okay. Let's do that. Let's bring it to the town council for a decision in May, the second Tuesday in May.
And are the town's meetings in person or are they virtual?
They are in person.
Okay.
And in fact, if you would like to, Bjorn, if you would like to come to our April meeting and just give us some basics about this, I think that would be good if it would fit into your schedule.
Okay, look into that. So I guess for everyone on the call, if you've received all the information you need and have had your questions answered, I want to thank you for your time coming out tonight. Like I said, my contact information is on there. Do an internet search for the town of Fairview if you need to contact the town administrator or any members of the council. But otherwise, want to thank you for taking time out of your schedules and learning more about this potential project.
All right, yep. Thank you, Bjorn. Yeah, I haven't seen any more questions come in. So, yep, just remind everyone to spread the word to your friends and family and neighbors to go on and take the survey and provide the input. That'll be going to town council, it sounds like, in May. So we definitely appreciate everyone's time tonight, and we hope you all have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.